After their defeat in World War I, Germany was in debt and lost much of their land, causing the German people to feel fear for the future of their country. After the Nazi regime came to power in 1933, the amount of anti-Semitism in Germany increased drastically. Anti-Jewish legislation began to pass, boycotts against Jewish-owned businesses started, and Jews were deported. After a Polish Jew shot a German embassy official on November 7, 1938, Nazi officials planned riots throughout Germany. These riots became known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. Kristallnacht was a one-night pogrom against Jews in Nazi Germany that lasted from November 9 to 10, 1938, resulting in the arrests of more than 30,000 Jewish men and at least 91 deaths. This was a turning point in the way Jews were being persecuted in Nazi Germany and the way Nazism was perceived internationally.
The Treaty of Versailles was a treaty signed at the end of World War I that forced Germany to take the majority of the responsibility for the war, as well as requiring Germany to pay 132 billion marks in damage reparations. After the stock market crash known as Black Thursday, the German people were more open to extreme political systems such as fascism and communism, in the hopes that more extreme policies would end the economic crisis. The Nazi Party was a far-right political party that pledged to reverse the provisions of the Treaty of Versailles, put the German people back to work, and restore Germany to its rightful position as a world power. The leader of the Nazi Party was Adolf Hitler, who embraced the idea that Jews were a separate race that was inferior to the Aryans. Hitler saw history as a process of racial struggle, with the strongest race, the Aryan race, ultimately prevailing by force of arms. In a speech, Hitler asserted, either victory of the Aryan or annihilation of the Aryan and the victory of the Jews. Hitler and other Nazi leaders falsely claimed that during World War I, the German Jews stabbed Germany in the back. Concern about Germany's future led to many Germans seeking the stability that Hitler claimed to offer. In 1935, the Nuremberg race laws were passed, which made it impossible for Jews to be full German citizens, and signs reading, "Jews not welcome," started appearing throughout Germany.
As time went on, Jews were being treated worse by the Nazi government, and hostility towards the Jewish community of Germany increased. Generally in the middle class, the German Jews were squeezed into poverty by continuous boycotts against their businesses organized by the Nazi government and being barred from many jobs. By this time, many Jews were being deported. The mass deportation enraged the whole Jewish community, most of whom either had family deported to the border or were deported themselves. Two victims of the mass deportation happened to be the parents of Herschel Grinspan, a 17-year-old Jewish boy living in Paris at the time. This angered him to the point that he would shoot a German embassy official by the name of Ernst von Rath in order to protest the deportations. After the shots were fired, Grinspan made no attempt to escape and confessed to shooting von Rath. Anti-Jewish riots started breaking out on November 8th, and von Rath died on the 9th due to the wounds. With the encouragement of the Reich Minister of Propaganda, the Nazi leaders planned the riots of Kristallnacht. Later that night, at 11:45 p.m., a report of the burning of a Jewish house was made, marking the start of Kristallnacht.
Telegrams were then sent to Nazi headquarters and offices across the country, and various police, paramilitary, and Hitler youth groups were mobilized in the middle of the night to take vengeance on the Jewish population. They were instructed to dress in civilian clothes to support the fiction that the entirety of the German public strongly opposed the Jews, while in reality, only a small percentage of the population really opposed the Jews. Jewish synagogues, prayer houses, and cemeteries in particular were targeted by rioters, who attacked or burned over 1,400 places of worship. The emergency services were sluggish in responding to the fires, and would only react if they threatened adjacent Aryan property. A fireman who had responded to a fire during Kristallnacht wrote about it in a letter. "We were ordered not to use any water till the whole synagogue was burned down. Many of us did not like to do that, but we had to be careful not to voice our opinions. Only after one of the party members was worried that his house was going to catch fire were we allowed to use water. But even then, we had to just stand and watch until the house of prayers was reduced to rubble and ashes." Of the roughly 9,000 Jewish businesses still operating in 1938, approximately 7,500 were raided, looted, or destroyed, the smashed glass windows giving Kristallnacht its name. However, the riots did not just result in damaged Jewish businesses. Jewish homes are also broken into and looted.
we thought it was safe enough to go downstairs. And when we came downstairs, our whole business, all the windows were broken, all the tools were strewn over the floor, and the benches were broken up. And in our apartment, every chair and every sofa and every bed was cut open with a knife.
Any Jewish people unfortunate enough to be nearby were beaten, abused, and some were even murdered. Kristallnacht resulted in more than 90 deaths. However, the actual death count is suspected to be more, as historian Saul Friedlander observed. Some 91 Jews had been killed all over Germany, and hundreds more had committed suicide or died as a result of mistreatment in the camps.
Within hours of Kristallnacht, Jewish men between the ages of 16 through 60 throughout Germany were taken and sent to concentration camps. This went on for days until more than 30,000 Jews were imprisoned. On Armistice Day, a total of 7 Jews were killed. In the next few days, the Nazi regime radicalized measures aimed at removing Jews entirely from the German economic and social life in the next few years. Decrees segregating Jews were passed very quickly. All Jewish schools, newspapers, and cultural organizations have been closed until further notice, as well as laws stating that Jews would be unable to live or do business in most districts of Germany and Austria. Those who owned shops and apartments would have them taken away and be exchanged for places in segregated areas. With Kristallnacht being the first open, large-scale attack on Jews made by the Nazis, it served Jews notice that Nazi anti-Semitism was not temporary and would only intensify.
Together with all other racial and religious groups in American life, to safeguard the equal rights of Jews at home and abroad.
The Nazi agenda became much more radical, with Hermann Göring, Hitler's second-in-command, ordering a fine on the Jewish population to pay for the property that the rioters damaged, only totaling around 225 million marks. However, the Jews were forced to collectively pay a fine of 1 billion marks to the German Reich. World leaders such as British Prime Minister Chamberlain publicly denounced Nazis' actions. In the US, anti-Nazi demonstrators protested in front of the German embassy, with Kristallnacht being the specific incident that symbolized Nazism.
After Kristallnacht, the Nazis started their territorial expansion, emboldened by the passivity that most German civilians responded with. This signaled to the Nazis that the German public was prepared for more radical measures. Aggression against Germany's neighbors succeeded without resistance, with Hitler and the other Nazi leaders counting on the reluctance of stronger countries to intervene, for fear of another war. However, Germany's occupation of Prague left no doubt to their intentions. On September 1st, 1939, Germany's military force invaded and conquered Poland within a month, thus marking the official start of World War II. By mid-1940, Germany had occupied Denmark, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Belgium. In June, France surrendered to Germany, which caused the people's trust in Hitler to skyrocket because many considered the invasion as revenge for World War I. Under conditions of war and military occupation, the Nazis could further pursue their racial goals. As the German troops advanced into Eastern Europe, where millions more Jews lived, German authorities exploited existing anti-Jew attitudes among local inhabitants. As war went on, ghettos were established where Jews were isolated from non-Jews and forced to live under extremely harsh conditions, where overcrowding, disease, and lack of sanitation was common. Eventually, to help carry out the final solution, also known as the Holocaust, the Nazis established concentration camps to commit genocide against the Jews and other minority groups. Eventually, the Soviet forces would make their way into Poland, liberating the camps. In April 1945, US troops liberated the concentration camps, with a reporter stating, "To future generations it must be told, once man did this to his brothers." In the 20th century, there existed a civilization which for 12 years returned to barbarism.
As the world watched in horror, Kristallnacht shattered illusions and revealed the true face of Nazism. The events of that night echoed through history, forever changing the world's perception of that set of ideologies. The event spurred Hitler's agendas to all-time extremes, leading to the Second World War. Additionally, the persecution of Jews escalated, leading to extreme anti-Semitism, decrees against Jews, and a few years later, the tragedy known as the Holocaust.